Wargamers. Today I want to talk about Tau broadsides. So I have my Index Xenos 2 book here, and we'll take a look at them, see how you want to run them, what their pros and cons are, and really how they might fit into a good Tau army today. Before we do that, though, I want to say thanks for watching. If you like this video, if you like my other videos, go ahead, hit the like button, the subscribe button, and the notification bell as well. That way you don't miss any of my upcoming unit reviews or battle reports. Alright, so let's get into it. Basically, broadsides, they're going to be running at about 200 points each, depending on how you kit them out, and they've taken on a different role in the Tau army. With a lot of the old staple units for the Empire, you're seeing that they're moving on to different functions, and that's true for the broadside as well. And that role is largely diminished. So broadsides aren't going to be a staple unit. They're not going to be the backbone of your army that's going to be putting out most of the firepower. Instead, I think there's a very specific role for them, and we'll get to that. We'll kind of explore that space together here in this video. But overall, they've benefited a lot from the changes that have been made to how heavy weapons work. They can move now and only take a -1 penalty to shooting instead of having a snapshot. And they've also benefited from the changes to twin linking. Basically, that it doesn't exist anymore, so they get double the shots, which in the past was always better. It was always better to take 2 of a weapon than to just twin link it, and that's still true now. So that was a boost for them there. However, they're hurt by the changes to missile pods. The way the missile pods work, they're not quite as good of a weapon as they used to be. It's kind of a jack of all trades, master of none scenario, and we talked a little bit about that in the Crisis Suit video. Also true for broadsides. The missiles just aren't as good as they used to be. So what does the actual profile look like? Well, it has movement 5, so it's a little bit slower than it used to be. Weapon skill 5 up, ballistic skill 4 up, strength 5, toughness 5, so it has toughness 5 now. 6 wounds, 2 attacks, 7 leadership, or 8 if it's the Chazray, and then a 2-up save. So, yeah, so pretty similar to what it was before, but the big change there is that it has 6 wounds. 6 wounds instead of 2, and while that makes it seem very durable, for about the same price you can get the equal number of wounds from a Crisis Suit, so it's not a huge, it's not a non-additive number of wounds. It's a expected amount of wounds for this price point, which is fine. Very much in line with everything else, so that's good. Basically, you can take one broadside. You can add up to 2 additional broadsides to that unit, and then you can take drones as well. And let's get kind of the simple things out of the way first as far as options. So the simple things here are going to be drones and seeker missiles. For drones, because these are such expensive units, and they're kind of in this weird position where they don't have a ton of wounds, but they do have a few. I don't think they're going to be seeing a ton of D6 or D3 weapons shot at them, but probably a fair amount. So you'll want to stay away from things like gun drones or marker drones with these guys, and really have a couple shield drones on hand to soak up those bigger hits. Stay away from missile drones. Missile drones aren't going to be doing a whole lot for you, because they suffer the same problems that broadsides themselves suffer from the changes to missile pods, but they're also just not as accurate as broadsides, as drones have always been, and they're not going to really give you any type of lasting support that a shield drone can, right? We really want those shield drones to be taking on those high AP value, multiple damage wounds that the broadsides themselves can't take on. So that's what we want to do. We want to take shield drones with these guys, and then with regard to seeker missiles, you can take a seeker missile on a broadside, and that's probably one of the better investments you can make. It's only 5 points for a seeker missile, and that's going to give you, on average, 1 wound half the time, so long as you spend a couple marker lights on it. So you have a 50-50 shot with 5 points of missile to do a wound, and that's a pretty high efficiency compared to a lot of other options and units. So I think in this edition, seeker missiles on broadsides are a great idea, and it especially goes well with their role that we'll get to in just a second. So Yes, so it takes shield drones, takes seeker missiles. Sounds good. Now, the big crux of the broadside issue is what are the guns? What do you take? What are the main weapons? What are the secondary weapons? What do you take? Well, that's where things get a little sticky and where the broadside really doesn't shine as brightly as it used to. It's less efficient than things like the Ghost Kill or the Riptide for taking out higher toughness targets, and it's also less efficient than things like Fire Warriors or Crisis Suits or Vespid for taking out lower toughness targets. So it doesn't really stand out just based on the math right away, but there is this sweet spot right around toughness 6, toughness 7, that either the missile pod loadout or the heavy rail rifle loadout are going to do pretty well. And they're going to do pretty well only when you consider the fact that they can take a supporting system at no loss of firepower. Crisis Suits can't do that. Crisis Suits have to give up a weapon slot to take a supporting system, and your other guys are going to want to take supporting systems that aren't going to really jive with these guys as your new anti-flyer unit. That's right, that's what I think broadsides are for. I think they are meant for anti-flyer units. And the reason for that is because a lot of flyers are toughness 6, toughness 7, and you can outload a unit of broadsides with a single velocity tracker, and that single velocity tracker applies to the whole unit. Just for clarification, I'll read that piece of war gear for you here too, just in case you're thinking, hey, it only applies to the model. The wording suggests otherwise. It says, add 1 to hit rolls for the unit when it shoots at a unit that can fly. So your broadside, if you have multiple broadsides, you can take 1 with a velocity tracker, and that benefit applies to the entire unit. And so for that reason, I would recommend running these guys in groups of 2, probably, maybe 3 if you're really concerned about it. But take one of them with a velocity tracker and then switch up the supporting system based on whatever your main gun is. Now you're going to want to go with a missile pod loadout if you're going to see more toughness 6, and a heavy rail rifle loadout if you're going to see more toughness 7. That's the threshold. If it's toughness 6, the missile pods are better. If it's toughness 7, the rail rifle is better. And so they both can do damage to any unit, right? Everything can hurt anything, but this is where they're going to be better. At toughness 6, the missile pods are going to be better, and at toughness 7, the rail rifle is going to be better. Now, with that in mind, what types of secondary weapons do you want to use? Well, I generally think you still want to stick with the smart missile system just because of the range, especially because these guys are not super fast moving. They're going to hang out on your back line, and you're not going to want to wait for something to get up close to use the plasma rifle. So smart missile system still is a good bet. Now, with that in mind, what are your support systems going to be? Well, we already talked about the velocity tracker on one of your guys, but then on your second guy or your third guy, what are you going to put on him? Well, if you're taking the high yield missile pod, probably the advanced targeting system or the target lock. And if you're taking the heavy rail rifle, almost definitely the target lock. Heavy rail rifle is not really going to benefit from the advanced targeting system, so the target lock is going to be better, allowing those models to move and fire at full ballistic skill. Whereas the guy with the velocity tracker, he won't be able to move and shoot at full ballistic skill, but at least those 2 other guys will, and they'll get the benefit from the velocity tracker. So that's how I think it should work. I think you want to run these guys in a couple, 2 or 3 guys per squad with a couple shield drones. Either missile pods or heavy rail rifle are equally valid options, but only in the context of using these guys as a anti-flyer unit. If you're not in an environment where you're seeing a lot of anti-flyers, or seeing a lot of flyers, you may not want to use these guys. You may want to consider other options. However, if other options aren't available to you, then broadsides can still put out a fair amount of damage. They're just pretty expensive for what you get. So that's what I think. Let me know what you think in the comments below, and of course, happy wargaming.